Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Urban Planning Committee meeting for the 23rd of September. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I pay my respects to the local Indigenous people of Moreland by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. I offer my respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Members of the gallery, please note the Urban Planning Committee meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website. The recording will be available as video on demand. Gallery attendances are advised that they may be recorded during the meeting. And we'll move on to who we have present this evening. Councillors in attendance this evening are Councillor Gillies, Councillor Samantha Ratnam, myself, Councillor Helen Davidson, and officers in attendance tonight are Acting Group Manager of City Development, Robert Shatford, Planning Coordinator, Mark Hughes, Senior Urban Planner, Nick Mulchiner, Senior Urban Planner, Dijana Sarek, and Governance Officer, Saskia Hunter. And I note that Councillor Tapanos is on his way, but however, he may be an apology if he's unable to make it here. And do we have any apologies for this evening to move?
Councillor Rob Thompson?
Yes. Moved by Councillor Samantha Ratnam, seconded by Councillor Gillies. And an adoption of the minutes from the meeting on the 26th of August. Moved by Councillor Samantha Ratnam, seconded by Councillor Gillies. Okay, we'll move on to how this evening will progress, and I'll give you an outline of the Urban Planning Committee meeting and how it will run. The relevant planner will introduce the report and the officer's recommendations. I will then give any objectors the opportunity to move to the lectern to make their submissions. After that, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you're making a submission, please state your name and address clearly for the record. You're requested to present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please don't repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposing the planning application, please inform the committee why you oppose it and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy concerns. Please use the opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. And there's a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, but as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or decrease that time. So now we'll move on to the presentation of reports. And first this evening we have 54 to 56 Essex Street, Pascoe Vale Planning Permit Application, MPS 2015. And I'll pass to the officer to introduce the application.
Thank you, Councillor. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm employed at Moreland as one of the planning coordinators. I've got up on the screen the site, which is known as 54 and 56 Essex Street in Pascoe Vale. The site contains 2 single-room buildings, and the immediate surrounds, which you can probably pick up from the aerial image, is residential. The proposal seeks to incorporate 3 different land uses onto the site, that being a medical centre, an indoor recreation facility or gym, and a restaurant. There's a small extension proposed at the rear, which highlighted here, of the site. There's also 3 car parking spaces proposed at the rear of the site. Also an outdoor dining area and pizza oven proposed to the rear of the property as well. In total, we received 13 objections, raising a variety of concerns, including concerns relating to amenity, the demand or the need for the uses, the group training sessions associated with the gym, and car parking and traffic concerns. There was a consultation meeting that occurred on the 27th of August where the applicant did offer to reduce some of the operating times. The report before the committee is recommending that the committee issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit. The recommendation is contained on page 4 of the agenda. Some of the conditions of note is changes to the operation times, meaning that the use cannot start before 7 a.m, and also a condition relating to the removal of the outdoor seating and pizza oven. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objectors present in relation to this application? Yes, please come forward.
I've timed it and it's 3 minutes, hopefully, so we'll go and see from there. Okay. Hi, I'm Bernadette Steinecke and I'm right next door, 58 to 60 Essex Street, Pascoe Vale, and one of the registered objectors for this application. Let me just say that upon looking at the Planning Department's advice for changes to be made, advertised for tonight's meeting for 54, 56 Essex Street, that we agree with these changes. We would, however, like to add to these suggestions from the Planning Department. I would like to state clearly that all training currently going on to cease immediately till the permit is granted. I understand that Planning Enforcement has already advised this applicant to do so and it's been ignored. However, I did receive an email from Merri just noticing that that's been addressed now. Point 1, parking, traffic, safety and access to driveways. We already have congestion around the intersection of Landals Road and Essex Street on a regular basis in the morning and afternoon peak times. Essex Street is a thoroughfare for commuters looking to avoid Gaffney Street and this is increasing. Recently the tenant has added a reflective film to the windows at 54 Essex Street and this is causing concern with reflection for accessing driveways and glare. We're happy for a film or some sort of thing to be added, but please make the windows more consistent with other gyms and training studios, example an opaque film or a one-way mesh. Currently the Milk Bar and 54 to 56 Essex Street, we have issues with cars parking in no standing zones and across our driveways. We would like parking bays running along the shop fronts clearly outlined and the parking changed outside the shop fronts and the side of Landals Road to 5-minute parking, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. This should also be added to the parking ranges list to be policed. I'll just quickly turn here, sorry. We would also like to point out that we're not happy with the car parking waiver with this mixed use to business of medical centre, gym and restaurant. And we would like to insist on a minimum of 5 car parking spaces at the back. These bays to be clearly outlined and surfaced with correct turning circle and access and entry point, including a wheelchair-friendly bay clearly outlined. Driveway sign posting would also need to be made for pedestrians walking along Landals Road with a possible speed hump in the driveway. We would also like to insist that any future development to land or buildings or any future subdivision of this lot have the permit rescinded and advertised and applied for again. This includes an increase to patron seating within the restaurant, which is currently advised for 12. We would also like to ask all deliveries to the business premises to happen during business hours, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 and on Landals Road. Point 2, bin waste and management. All bins to be collected on Landals Road. Waste management to be collected more than once a week for smell and rodents. Again, private collection to happen between Monday and Friday from after 7 a.m. from Landals Road. Any waste storage or rubbish to be stored away from the private residence for smell and impact on amenity. Point 3, stormwater runoff. Currently, with the change in servicing and added buildings to the back of 56 Essex Street that has taken place without a permit, this is causing damage to our paving and carport area, making the surface unsafe to walk on when it rains. Please address this ASAP as we've already had a child slip and fall on her back. We believe this is becoming an OH&S issue for us. To sum up, we would like it noted that we are a shift-working family that includes night shift and weekends. We're very pleased with the advice and planning that the Planning Department is offering councillors this evening, and with the recommendation of relocating the restaurant seating inside to remove the outside pizza oven and the serving window, as this would have impacted immensely on our household. We would ask that the councillors also consider that we are a blue neighbourhood residential zone and over 1.7 kilometres from the nearest train station and over 800 metres from any shops and services. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Is there another objector in relation to this application? Yep. Good evening.
Yeah, the only thing my concern is regarding, like she said about the parking, because if they park, I'm from 69 Essex.
What was your name?
Eugenia Jacovino,
Yeah.
from 69 Essex Street. And my concern is if they park cars like next to the driveway to back out, and I've got problems because we've got a big tree there next to the driveway, which takes about 1.5 meters width. Plus, if they park cars, and when the cars are turning into Essex, from Landals Road, you can't see till they are next to you, and I don't want anything to happen. So that's the main concern about the parking. Because if they park there and just next to the driveway and even across the road, then the cars turning in, they got nowhere to move. So it's very complicated business there. And other than that, that's my concern is about the parkings, which eventually, you know, once the business is going, people are going to stop there, park the cars to get in and out. So that's my concern.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further objectors in relation to this application? No. Is the applicant present or a representative? Yes, please come forward.
Hi, how are you? My name is Ryland Sutherland and I'm the applicant for 54 to 56. To start with, I suppose just run through my business. Obviously, it is what is highlighted. I do hope to bring into the area another gym, juice bar, health food cafe, which noticing the area and the development that's going on in the area, there doesn't seem to be a strong emphasis on healthy food for people in the area. So I did want to bring something different to the area, as well as alternative therapies and providing meditation and yoga classes. At the moment, I have plans to introduce school programs, connecting with sporting clubs and community groups, Indigenous groups as well. At the moment, I am linked at the moment with Hume City Council and the Deadly Elders Group, and also the Wandara Foundation as well. I do have plans to start a foundation for the local area, of which I would like to, I suppose, attach to my business, add something else, which will give back to the community as much as I can. I am obviously at a stage where development has gone in the area. I put my hand up and acknowledge that I should have waited and got my planning permits. I'm happy with the amendments that have been made to the plans, although I do put to the council that there's a possibility of keeping the pizza oven and using for private use. There is a way of channeling the smoke away from neighbours and attaching a flute to it, so I would like the council to consider that. As with bin collections, as with my lovely neighbour, I support the Landals Roads pickups absolutely 1 to 2 times a week, whatever is needed for the area. We do hope to be a sustainable business where we recycle a lot of our material. Obviously, being a juice bar, we'll have a lot of leftovers, which we want to put back into our gardens, which we grow a lot of our produce for as well, which is in the backyard. If you look at the plans, you can see that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors for the applicant or the officers?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question of the applicant.
Sure.
Why is it that you did carry out works prior to seeking permission from the council? I mean, what you've said is all very well and good, but the reality is you started before seeking permission.
I suppose being a young entrepreneur, I was very eager to get going. I did have planning permits being drawn up last year, which then the draftsman that was doing them took off overseas unexpectedly. So other than just being enthusiastic, I don't really have an excuse for doing that.
Okay. Are there any further questions from councillors? No, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, can we have some discussion?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so are we calling for an adjournment, or do you want to address? Sure. Yep.
Can I just add something?
What?
Just quickly, with you saying of having the pizza oven, we're currently waiting on a permit to come through from building, because we're actually building a habitable room behind the carport. So that makes a fire source within 1 metre from a habitable room.
Okay.
So I'd like that considered as well.
All right.
Please.
That might be a separate issue as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Go on.
Look, we've obviously been briefed on this particular matter, and I've got to say, I missed your last name, sorry? Ryland. Mr. Ryland, I'm actually quite disappointed with the way you've gone about this. You have obviously disenfranchised, unnecessarily so, your neighbours by carrying out works before you even sought permission. If you were going through a drafts person, you would have known what the process was. that being said, it is a difficult one because the buildings are old. They've been there for a while. They were always shops at some point. So, our hands are tied in what we can and can't do. I will say also that we've been notified that that the gym has been used without a permit yet again, and there's been a fine issued on that. And as far as I'm aware, and I just think that the more this goes on, in fact, the worse you are making it for yourself. And that's disappointing also because you are in an area that is growing. It's becoming more urban, if you know what I mean. People are moving in and want to partake of these natural therapies and all the good things that you're doing, but the good things you're doing are being undermined by the way you've behaved to date. I just want to say that. Obviously, that is separate to how I make my decision, but I did want to let you know that that's how I felt about this particular matter. And I understand why the neighbours are so disenfranchised and upset.
Thank you, Councillor Gills. Councillor Ratner?
I'd just like to ask a question of officers regarding one of the points made by Bernadette, I believe I got her name right, in regards to the reflective windows. So you mentioned that there'd been a new film.
That's something that's just been added in the last 2 days, so Mark would not be aware of that.
Can I just ask about what regulation there is about that in terms of treatment of windows and to sort of commercial entities? Is there any regulation around that, or?
There's no rule around it in terms of what the planning scheme directs us to consider. In making the recommendation, the councillors might want to consider a further condition on the planning permit. So you could potentially look at condition number 1 and add a further subclause to it where you can ask for an additional film or something like that. Give me a few months, I could probably think of some wording for you, but you could potentially address it that way.
Just in relation to that point, I would be more amenable to the idea of officers going out inspecting it and then potentially addressing it. I'm not sure if that's possible, but...
So perhaps we need to have a clause in there that says that the treatment of the front facade windows need to be to the satisfaction of
the officers'
council. Do you think that's
recommendation?
Is that possible, do you think?
You could certainly do that,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. If we're able to potentially add that in.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. Okay.
Thanks very much.
I'm happy to move. Was it
That subject to council officer recommendation, the windows will be treated to their satisfaction.
I've got
that.
Subject.
Okay.
Did you have any suggestions?
My thoughts are, because where you're putting that subclause of condition one is talking about amended plans to be provided.
Oh.
So if you're looking at it being shown on amended plans, and you could certainly do that. So you could ask for details of any window film
To be added to.
to be shown on the plans.
Okay.
So,
Just ask you.
so the wording.
Be the same, except that it would add at the end.
Basically, you would delete from Saskia what you put up there that's subject to council officer recommendation. I would delete that so it starts at details of.
Plan subject to the satisfaction of the planning authority or officers. Can we do that? Because we would like the details, but they need to be to our satisfaction.
So the preemptive statement is
the subject
the
of
top of condition
conditions.
1.
Yep.
So within 3 months from the date of this permit, amended plans to the satisfaction of the
Yeah,
responsible
okay, it's
authority.
perfect by that. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm happy to
great.
move the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you,
Happy
Councillor.
to move it if you want. You want me to move it, or you would like to
I
move
don't
it?
mind. Oh, look, okay, I will.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Gillies, seconded by Councillor Ratnam. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Do we do some discussion? Speak to it.
Do you wish to?
Yeah, I'd like to speak. Are you going to speak to it
That's
as
fine.
well?
No, that's
Okay,
fine.
sure.
Yeah, I've already
just to
spoken.
Speak very briefly to it. Thanks very much for to the objectors who came here tonight and prepared a very detailed submission. I think there's a lot of food for thought there beyond even the conditions that are a part of this planning permit. So we have proposed that we're going to approve the permit with those sort of highlighted conditions of deleting the servery window, reducing changing the opening hours for 7 a.m. earlier start, and a deletion of the outdoor dining area. And a number of the other conditions as specified in the report. But you did raise a number of other issues that are sometimes beyond, well, in this case, are beyond a planning permit application, but definitely within the purview of council to follow up on. So I thank you for that. I share Councillor Gillies' concerns about the process that has been entered into here, and I hope from this point onwards we have a more cooperative arrangement between the business owner, business operator, and the surrounding neighbourhood. I think that makes for a much better arrangement, and in future, if there are any changes to that use of that site, it will just be so much more amenable if cooperation starts from here. So I hope that is heeded from tonight. Just in terms of the other matters that were raised about parking bays in the area and internal parking bays, I'm reasonably comfortable, although I'm a bit nervous about the reduction in car parking. However, the things that we see at urban planning and across council is that these things are also subject to monitoring. So, for example, council does regular traffic audits of particular streets, particularly when there are tensions between commercial and residential areas, and residential amenities decline because parking is being used more frequently by people coming to visit businesses. And we're really happy to follow that up. And I think what will happen in this case is we trial this out. We really want to hear back from residents about how things go, and if it does become unworkable, there are the times to get in contact with council so we can do those traffic studies. In future, for example, if we find that the demand outweighs the supply of residential parking, the business owner themselves might find themselves in a situation where they have very limited parking because it's mostly resident or very restricted parking and have to find alternative sources. So I hope that the business owner and the residents can work together on that, and I really urge the surrounding residents to let us know how things go, and we'll have think about what we can follow up in a subsequent council meeting about monitoring that situation as well. So I'm happy to undertake that.
And subject to any future development of the lot. So if the owner of the land wanted to say...
Sorry, there shouldn't be any further discussion from the gallery. So
that's right. So that's all part of it in terms of future use. So yes, it's incorporated.
And if you've got any further questions, please feel free to email us. It's just we can't accept any further discussion at the moment. Councillor Gillies, do you wish to add anything further?
Not really. I think, what we've already done has been significant. I wasn't going to say anything. And we will be monitoring it for the full year. That's why we actually restricted the hours of operation because we want to see and monitor what happens. So as Councillor Ratnam said, we do want to hear from the residents and make sure that, we are doing everything we can to make sure that things aren't becoming untenable for you.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I'll pass to the Planning Officer to sum up the process from here.
Thank you, Councillor. The Urban Planning Committee has resolved to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit. A copy of that decision will be posted to the applicant and all objectors. The notice will explain the review rights to VCAT. For an objector, they have a 21-day period in which to lodge a review to VCAT, whereas the applicant has a 60-day period to lodge an appeal against any conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just note that Councillor Tapanos has passed on his apology for this evening. Can I have someone to move that? Moved by Councillor Gillies, seconded by Councillor Ratnam. And now, all those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll now move on to planning application 284 to 294 Albert Street, 343 and 343A Sydney Road, Brunswick. Planning permit application MPS 2014-1051.
Go across from water.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The site is known as 343 Sydney Road and 284 Albert Street in Brunswick. The proposed works are mainly taking place over the L-shaped portion of the site, which is highlighted in the blue outline. The site is sitting within a commercial precinct. Immediately to the south of the site, we have a 5-storey mixed-use building. To the southwest, we have a Woolworths shopping precinct, including a large car parking site. And part of the subject site to the northwest is an approved 14-storey building. These photos highlight some of the key details of the site. And this is the subject site as seen from Sydney Road frontage. This is the existing pedestrian access from Sydney Road to the car park. These are the balconies facing north towards the subject site. And this is the amenity and the conditions of that walkway. The site is located within a commercial 1 zone and is affected by 3 overlays. The application seeks approval for partial demolition and extension of the existing commercial building facing Sydney Road and partial demolition of the warehouses at the rear, and construction of an 8-storey building to the rear of the existing commercial building, which includes 56 dwellings, 4 retail premises and 12 car parking spaces within the basement. This plan shows the proposed vehicle access from the approved 14-storey building to Albert Street through the basement to the subject site. And this is just the layout of that car parking area, the layout of the commercial areas on the ground floor, and proposed pedestrian link. And this is a typical dwelling layout over the 7 levels above. These are the elevations of the proposed development. The design of the built form is consistent with the development that's already approved at 14 stories. The shadow diagrams. We've received 7 objections in association with this application. Main concerns include amenity impacts, building height, overdevelopment, loss of outlook. A consultation meeting was held on the 6th of July. As a result of that consultation meeting, the applicant submitted revised drawings, which includes details of the southern elevation in response to some of the concerns from the objectors to the south. And that includes textured concrete to be included along the southern elevation and just greater articulation and an improved presentation to the south. In addition, a plan was submitted to council showing proposed improvements of the existing accessway from Sydney Road to the Woolworths car park and how that may be treated and incorporated within the subject site as well. It's recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued for the proposal, subject to conditions in the recommendation. However, we're seeking a correction of condition 1A, which is on page 30. And that condition is to read a minimum separation of 8 metres from the west-facing balconies of apartments 4 and 5 on level 7 to the east facade of Building A of the approved development at 284 to 294 Albert Street.
Great, thank you. Is there an objector in relation to this? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you, councillors. My name is Peter Tregear. I'm an owner of a property on 337-341 Sydney Road. It's the building immediately to the south. I'm also currently the chair of the Owners Corporation. I should say at the outset that I don't think I would be have any objections from any of the owners to say that we recognise that the surrounding area of our building is in need of some TLC. It's in need of development, and that we, and since we're not just NIMBYs, we recognise that there is some opportunity here for us as well as some potential some criticisms. Several lot owners have made and recorded formal objections to this application on the grounds that include, as said, excessive building height relative to the architectural norm in the surrounding area, and recognise that the building a 14-storey building has been approved, but it is well set back. There's certainly not a building of 8 stories high that is that close to Sydney Road, and it is a change to the general form of the streetscape. The consequent overshadowing of our property and impact on the privacy of residents, as has been mentioned. But perhaps, and I know that's been addressed, and I know that we've probably not got much sympathy in the reports you've got, but I would say this, that what doesn't seem to be addressed is that sufficient consideration of the impact on overall traffic congestion, public space and general amenity in the area, which I think returns us to this question of bulk, the lack of sort of public space and so on. The idea that the entrance of this building will be the easement that was part of the original development application for 337341 Sydney Road causes us all sorts of problems, because that easement already causes a lot of problems. It's a space, as you said, it's in a very poor condition simply because, of course, of the flow through of pedestrians and other and social problems that we're seeing in that space. I also have to say personally that my bedroom is directly above that, and I can't imagine that when that was approved and the council approved the planning of 337341 that they were really seriously considering that entrance would be a major portal for pedestrians as well as traffic. So I mean, I think there are knock-on consequences that I just don't think have been properly considered. And I would draw Council's attention to Volume 2, Part 1 of the Brunswick Structure Plan Local Area document, which states that the Albert Street supermarket has poor street interfaces on Albert, Phoenix and Saxon streets, poor pedestrian amenity and so on. And I'm not convinced that this development actually improves it, and arguably it could potentially create more problems for it. And finally, as I'd stated in a letter that I'd written on behalf of the owners of the corporation to the Mayor, dare I say it, and I have to say disappointingly unanswered on the 27th of January, we've been struck by the similarity of concerns that we have to recent press concerning the overdevelopment of spaces in the City of Melbourne. In particular, I'd note that this development is for the 46 one-bedroom apartments and 7 studio apartments, and I really struggle to see how that encourages the right kind of mix. If we want real community development in Brunswick, if we really want to see a mix of ownership, we want to see families in Brunswick and so on, that strikes me as build them quick and sell them high, and then leave the general social issues for the rest of us, and ratepayers, and not just the ratepayers 337341. And I would note there have been trenchant criticisms levelled at similar high-yield, small floor plan developments that have been built in the City of Melbourne, and we are also keen to ensure that Brunswick does not make the same generational scale error. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there another objector who wishes to speak? Yes, please come forward.
Hi, my name's Vanessa Perica. I'm also an owner of an apartment within 341 Sydney Road. I very much echo Peter's sentiments in every regard, but one of my partner and I's main key issues, which was addressed at the last meeting, it was the overshadowing, which I believe was looked at last time and thought to be a little inaccurate. So I noticed from the diagram that's provided this time that 8 apartments are in pretty much full shadow the entire day, you'll see to the right. And that to me, with the concrete 3 metres away from you, that's not a good standard of living whatsoever, and that's really upsetting. I'm just to the left of that, and there's 3 hours unaccounted for from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. So if you go online, you'll see that by 12:30 we will be in shadow. So to say that we need to have 5 hours minimum of sunlight, I don't think, definitely the 8 apartments on the right are not going to receive that, but we're not going to receive that either. So I think from a quality of life perspective, my partner and I have bought an apartment just after hearing of these plans from Perth for that northern aspect, and we're immensely disappointed. And to see that it's going to be, blocked in by 45 metres square 1-bedroom apartments, I feel we're making a similar mistake that Peter's referring to. So if we could just have a bit of thought towards that, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there another objector? Yes.
Councillors, in regards to the pedestrian access at 337
Sydney Road, the former Cumberland Arms site. There was a named laneway there in, I believe, the late 19th and early 20th century. It has been a public right-of-way in the past. It's certainly at present an important pedestrian access route. Yes, there have been some interesting tenants in the buildings next to that pedestrian area, but it is not just a private pedestrian entrance. It is an important pedestrian access point to the supermarket beyond, and I certainly approve of the planning officer's attention to its detail.
Thank you. Are there any further objectors who wish to speak? Or... No? Is there a representative for the applicant present? Yes.
Good evening, councillors. My name's Tim McBride Burgess. I'm from Contour Town Planners. I'm here on behalf of the permit applicants, the developers who are here with me this evening. Firstly, I just want to thank you and acknowledge the assistance that the council officers have provided us through this application process. This site has a history. It is part of the site next door, which also has an existing planning approval. And I just want to confirm firstly that we support and accept the officer's recommendations that are within the council report that are before you tonight. This site is clearly locationally constrained. It is in effect an island parcel of land with a narrow entry onto Sydney Road. However, it's landlocked. But we've got an ownership arrangement that allows or provides an opportunity that we're unlikely to see again if this development doesn't go ahead, or if in fact the existing approval at 284 Albert Street goes ahead, the opportunity on this site disappears. The proposal is, for all intents and purposes, an extension of that existing approval. That approval, as you know, has a history. It was recently amended and approved last year for an amended proposal and an improved design, both aesthetically and in terms of its internal amenity for that building too. The officer's assessment's been comprehensive, so I'm not going to go into the key sort of assessment details, other than to say that the building is 8 stories tall. It's 25 metres, which is exactly what the Brunswick Structure Plan and Draft DDO 18 nominates for this particular site. We're not proposing anything more than what the planning scheme contemplates for this particular site. It will also, at that height, provide a legible transition down to Sydney Road. We've got 14 stories that steps down to 8 stories that then retains the single-storey addition at Sydney Road, which will respect the existing heritage streetscape along Sydney Road, which is, again, exactly what the Brunswick Structure Plan is seeking to do. The proposal has an interface to its south, which is a challenging interface, and we say that we have respected that. And in doing so, that we confirm, as the officers have in their report, that this proposal exceeds the minimum setback that the Moreland High Density Code asks us to achieve in terms of the relationship to the building immediately to the south. The two matters that I do want to focus on, councillors, very quickly are, firstly, the car parking situation. Clearly, the site's constrained in terms of its overall site area. It's a small site, and to get access, we've got to go through an existing approved building. There are 12 car spaces provided for a total of 56 apartments, and we can't hide from that fact. It's a reality. What we've tried to do, though, is put forward a proposal that manages that situation. The access through the adjoining building creates a difficulty, but it's one where it can be managed through a provision of outcomes that benefit from the location. Firstly, what we've done is put forward an opportunity for a green travel plan, and that's been confirmed through the officer's recommendation and the conditions. That green travel plan will include initiatives like annual Mikey cards, as well as membership to flexi cars. We've also got in excess of what we need in terms of bicycle provision, and we've ensured that every apartment, and again has been confirmed through the conditions, that doesn't have a car space will have a bicycle space. We've also got the proximity, the location. We're on the doorstep of a train station. We're on the doorstep of the upfield bike corridor. We're next door to a supermarket. We're off Sydney Road and all of the shops, community facilities and hospitality facilities that are associated with Sydney Road, and we've got the Brunswick Baths immediately to our south as well. In terms of a location, we couldn't be better placed in terms of planning scheme requirements to seek a reduction in car parking provision. The dwellings also are small. That's been a deliberate decision because of the constraints of the site and the constraints surrounding parking provision. It would be more difficult to stand here and tell you that it was appropriate to have 2 and 3 bedroom apartments without a car space. It was a decision that the permit applicant made and my clients made to deal with that circumstance. That said, it also needs to be considered that this is an extension of the existing approval next door. Next door has a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, and we're currently in the process of sales, and we'll be coming back to the council with amendments to amalgamate some of those apartments into 3 bedroom apartments, because that's what the market has driven us to do on that particular proposal. Secondly, I do want to talk about the laneway.
Sorry to interrupt, I'm just conscious of time.
Yes, I will be very quick. Thank you, Councillor. The laneway is the most significant attribute of this proposal, and the improvements that we can offer are something that will never be offered again. This laneway was created as a result of the permit next door. It's not the result of a section controlled by a Section 173 agreement. It's not council's land, it's a condition on the neighbour's permit only. What we can do though, and what we've offered to do, our clients have offered to do at their own cost, is improve that laneway, because it can't be said that it's anything other than an unsafe space currently. It's an undercroft, unlit, unlandscaped space between Sydney Road and the Woolworths car park. And what this proposal provides is an opportunity that we volunteered at our cost to upgrade. That upgrades includes landscaping, surface works, new lighting, and we've been asked to look at additional options as well, and those that we're happy to do. We've said that both to the neighbours next door to the south, when I met with them, the Owners Corporation personally, but also we've committed to that with the officers too. We see that as a community benefit, one that council, if we don't do it, you're going to have to do it yourself. Unfortunately, that's a reality. It's one that should be realised or has an opportunity to be realised. And it's not just relating specifically to this laneway and the laneway in its own right. What we've sought to do is create a surface treatment that carries our existing landscape treatment around the western side of the 284 Albert Street proposal and provide a logical pedestrian connection from Albert Street around the edge of the Woolworths car park and down around into the front of our site and around onto Sydney Road. In addition to those landscape works, what we're also proposing is activation at both ends of the laneway. We have 4 new retail tenancies in a residential lobby that will open out onto that laneway, create light activity activation, and we're punching new windows into the extension to the rear of the single-storey addition that fronts out onto Sydney Road, which we want to see as being a cafe space, lighting, activation again. It creates and will create a safer space in what is currently a very, at certain times of the day, frightening environment. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity for making this submission tonight.
Are there any questions from councillors to the applicant or officers? Yes, Councillor Ratner.
I just had a question in regards to one of the concerns, one of the objectives raised in terms of the 5 hours of shadowing. And just my reading of the report is that while 5 hours of direct sunlight is required, I'm just looking at the clause 22 or 73.6, there's also a condition around setbacks, which it meets in this case, but it still doesn't meet the 5 hour requirement. So I'm wondering, I'm just asking the question about how that's been reconciled in the proposed recommendation. Does it meet the 5 hour minimum, or is the setback that has been met and therefore the 5 hours, therefore it becomes subservient to that?
Okay. So at the moment, I guess we're working with 2 separate policies. Yeah. The existing policy within the planning scheme at 2207 and the new provision brought in by the code.
Yeah.
According to the code, the proposed development needs to be set back the same distance as the building next door. Yeah. Therefore, their balconies are set back 3 metres, and all that this development is required to do is set back its southern side is 3 metres and then can come back to the boundary and then just create hollows opposite the balconies. So in this instance, the proposal is set back about 4 metres consistently, which is
So
not
it
required by the
satisfies that.
code. Yeah, so it's in
satisfies the
addition to the
codes.
code,
Yeah.
which is the policy that's coming in to replace the existing policy which we've relied upon.
And the existing policies are 5 hours.
Yeah, which
Right, so that's
has-
the contradiction. Right, okay, right. Okay, so it's reconciling the tension of those two objectives in the policy. One is achieving through the setback and one is through the minimum daily sunlight.
Sunlight.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Okay. Any further questions or Councillor Gillies? No? Okay.
Recommendation? Or not recommendation, an alternative, I'd like to move.
Councillor Ratman to move an alternate recommendation.
And I will speak to this in detail once I move it, but I'd like to move that a refusal to grant planning permit MPS 214-1051 be issued for partial demolition, alterations and additions to the existing heritage building, construction of an 8-storey building comprising of retail premises, development and use of the buildings, reduction in car parking, loading bay requirements, subject to the following grounds of refusal. And bear with me, it's a bit detailed, but I think it's worth highlighting. And the grounds are: 1, the proposal does not provide an appropriate number of car parking spaces pursuant to clause 52.06 car parking of the Moreland Planning Scheme, having regard to the demand likely to be generated and the activities on the land which will have an adverse impact on the surrounding road network. 2, the proposal fails to satisfy the standards and objectives of clause 22.07 the Moreland Apartment Design Code, forming Planning Scheme Amendment C142. Specifically, A, the eastern setback of 4.6 metres fails to provide the respective 6 metres and 9 metre setbacks pursuant to table 22.07. The proposal fails to respond to the constraints of the site and its eastern interface and ensure equitable development opportunities. B, the western setback of 6 metres fails to provide the 9 metre setback required for dwellings 3, 4 and 5 at levels 5, 6, 7 and 8, pursuant to table 22.07. C, the western setback of dwelling 2 on all levels fails to comply with the setback requirements pursuant to table 22.07, 1-1. D, due to the non-compliance with building separation requirements of clause 22.07 4.2, the proposal fails to provide adequate access to natural light to comply with clause 22.07 4.3 daylight access. E, the proposal wholly consists of one-bedroom dwellings and fails to provide a range of dwelling sizes in larger developments pursuant to clause 22.07 dwelling diversity. F, the size and layout of the dwellings fails to meet the needs of the occupants to enable flexibility of use pursuant to clause 22.07 5.2, particularly as the majority of dwellings contain living spaces smaller than the bedrooms. And I'd like to add an additional point, which I'm happy to be wordsmithed by the officers, but I'd also like to add an additional point 3, that the bulk and scale fails to meet clause 22.01 of the local planning policy framework with regards to the height and bulk in relation to the heritage character of Sydney Road. I'm happy for some wordsmithed. And we can come back to the final wording if that's okay, but I'll have to speak to it. I'll speak to it and then we might sort out the wording.
Councillor Gillies, yes.
And that final point is just to ensure that we have something about the character and ensuring consistency with Sydney Road character
Thank you.
as well.
So perhaps whilst Councillor Ratman speaks, we can work up the
wording.
For that.
Yes. I'll speak to quickly. That's a big mouthful of the conditions, but I think it is important to note a number of the technical aspects that I feel this development meets. We take these decisions, we don't take these decisions lightly, particularly of buildings of this size and character and scale, and a change to the existing character of an area. We do acknowledge that we have earmarked particularly that upfill corridor for quite significant renewal and more development in density. However, it also needs to be matched with existing amenity and ensuring the best outcomes for the community in the future. One of the things I'm most disappointed with in terms of this plan is the size of the apartments, 45 to 49 square metres, fails to even meet the 50 metres minimum that cities like the City of Melbourne and we are moving towards. I was hoping that the development community is hearing that loud and clear, that we do want to move towards a minimum apart dwelling size to ensure amenity for future residents. We're consigning generations of particularly young people to a very different way of living, and by and large, a great proportion of the population is happy with higher density, but it also needs to meet and manage their future needs. And I don't think we should be consigning people to uninhabitable dwellings, because that's the only choice they have in terms of affordable housing. And decisions that we make here will impact that, because it's about what stock is available there that changes the market conditions. So we've got to take those things very, very seriously. The car parking waiver, I'm very, very supportive of car parking waivers, and my previous decisions at UPC will indicate that. However, I think given the number of dwellings, one-bedroom, studio-sized dwellings, there's a lack of diversity there. That added to the car parking waiver that's sought here, just for me does not sit right. There's an 83% reduction sought for this building, and that's on top of 35% reduction for the adjoining 14-storey building. We have to think about the cumulative impact for that corner of Albert Street and Sydney Road. We've got to think about the future amenity and needs of our residents, and that's what we're doing here. I was really pleased to hear that a green plan was being negotiated with council. We're getting applications coming to UPC where those things aren't just about notional things that are going to be done in future. We are having developers negotiate with future residents of a building to ensure that they will agree to not have a car when they move into the building in exchange for a green travel plan and some of the conditions that you outlined. We'd like to see those negotiations much more progressed before they even come to UPC, because that's a significant waiver. It's a significant thing you're asking the community to do and to trust you on. Really happy to trust the development community on that, but we'd like to see it further progressed before it comes to the UPC. I think in terms of just lastly, on the walkway improvements, really happy to hear that there was a proposal to improve the walkway. But my recollection is that when we came to the 284 Albert Street, on my time of council, we had an amended plan put before us. The previous plan was approved prior to our time on this council, but an amended plan came to us very early in this term of council, which sought to increase the number of dwellings once again in that building, I believe. I remember the walkway improvements being talked about then as a trade-off for some of the amenity impacts that we were being asked to compromise on. So I was disappointed to see that this is now being talked about as the bonus of this proposal, when I believe that it was talked about at the last proposal.
Can I respond to that?
No, not in this forum, no.
Anyway, that's my recollection. I might be wrong, but I also think those improvements should happen as a matter of course and shouldn't be conditional on such great compromises for the community. I think this is asking for too much. I'd like a better proposal to come before us, and that's why I'm moving for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Gillies, do you wish to add anything?
I'm supporting it for all those reasons, so there's no point in me rehashing.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. The wording, that's right.
So the concern is at the south elevation.
That's right, yeah.
So the proposed siting, scale and form presents a visual mass. Inconsistent with the
Very well done. No, you did really well.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, good.
How do you feel about that one?
Yep, that's okay. That's fine. Do we have to cite the labelled character clause, or it's not relevant for this?
Fine.
Okay, that's fine. Beautiful. Thank you. I'm happy with that.
Thank you for that. In that case, I'll put the recommendations for the refusal to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And we'll pass to the planning officer to sum up the process from here.
Thank you. The Urban Planning Committee has decided to issue a refusal to grant a planning permit subject to the grounds contained within the alternative recommendation. Following the issue of the refusal to grant a planning permit, both the applicant and the objector parties will receive a copy of the refusal. The applicant will have 60 days to appeal council's decision at BCAT. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move on to DD 8415, 240 to 250 Lygon Street, Brunswick East, planning permit application MPS 2009-304A. And I'll just give the gallery an opportunity to leave if they wish. So those people for the last applications. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. So this is an application to amend the planning permit at 240 to 250 Lygon Street in Brunswick East. Just a quick history of the site and the previous planning permit that was issued. MPS 2009/304 sought approval for the use and development of the site for the purpose of a multi-level building, 8 stories plus 2 levels of basement, comprising dwellings and retail premises and a dispensation in the car parking requirements. This planning permit was approved at the tribunal in December 2010. So the subject site has a frontage of 36.1 metres, a depth of 43 metres and an overall area of 1,570 square metres. The site is currently developed with a warehouse and factory buildings covering the majority of the site, with part of the building built to the Lygon Street frontage and part with a 10-metre front setback. You can see the front facade of the existing buildings in that photo. The site is located within the Brunswick Major Activity Centre and the Commercial 1 zone. Under the proposed design and development overlay, a maximum overall building height of 7 stories is sought. So this amendment proposes the following changes. A reduction in the number of dwellings from 112 to 96, including a reduction from 82 one-bedroom dwellings to 31 one-bedroom dwellings, an increase from 30 two-bedroom dwellings to 65 two-bedroom dwellings, resulting in an increase in bedrooms from 124 to 161, a reduction in the car parking spaces from 103 to 82, internal layout changes, changes to the built form, including generally increasing setbacks, and modifications to the external appearance. So up on the screen, on the left-hand side, we have the proposed site layout. On the right-hand side, we have the plans that were considered by BCAP. The main change on the ground level is the setback to the north boundary has been removed, and the built form now is constructed to the north boundary. Moving up to the first floor plan, generally the same building envelope. All the dwellings now have a balcony. So in the previous plans, some of the dwellings did not have balconies, whereas in the proposed plans, all dwellings now have a balcony. That layout is replicated on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th floors. Main change on the 4th floor is the balconies have been pushed forward to the front property boundary, and we'll come back to that on the elevations. Moving up to the 5th floor plan, the main change is an increase in the setback to Lygon Street from 3 metres to approximately 6 metres in the proposed plans. And that's replicated on the next 2 levels. There's also been changes to the external appearance of the development. As you can see, the proposed plans at the top of the screen and the previous plans at the bottom of the screen. That's the Lygon Street facade. There's the south elevation, east elevation, north elevation. In the north elevation, you can see where the balcony has been pushed forward to the Lygon Street frontage, just pushing that section to the front property boundary. The application to amend the permit was advertised and there were 4 objections received, with concerns including bulk and mass overlooking, overshadowing, loss of vegetation, car parking and safety. The recommendation is for a notice of decision to grant an amended planning permit, subject to the conditions contained within the recommendation. Thank you.
Is there an objector in the audience who wishes to speak? Are there any objectors in relation to this application? No? Is there a representative from the applicant present? Yes? Do you wish to speak?
Yes.
Yes? Please come forward.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to present this evening, and thank you to the planning officers for their ongoing assistance to our client in this matter. In short, the amendments improve the amenity of the development and its efficiency and sustainability by the deletion of a basement level and the reworking of the apartment layouts and the changing in the composition of the number of one-bedroom dwellings to two-bedroom dwellings. As you can see, it's an underutilised site on a main road, better opportunities for the site's use and contribution to the gentrification of Lygon Street is evidenced by the planning permit. As you know, we've got commercial one zoned land where residential development should be provided at densities commensurate with that zoning. The Brunswick Structure Plan calls for housing diversity and a responsible supply of car parking, and it calls for activation of the main streets, all of which is embodied by the project generally and partially by the amended plans, in that the retail space really isn't altering. The building height and scale is also consistent with the BSP and with the planning permit that has been issued for the site. It's respectfully submitted that the amendments are worthy of council's support, both to improve the quality of the development and, as I say, its efficiency and sustainability, and to facilitate the ongoing transformation of Lygon Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors to the applicant or the officers?
I will just say that there was a vast improvement on the amended plans in terms of the look of the facade, because we tend to be getting a lot of dog box type style development, and I will say that it was improved. It's not my cup of tea, but it was improved.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. If Councillor Ratnam, do you wish
I'm happy to move the recommendation as outlined in the report that an amended planning permit be issued for the use and development of this site, subject to the conditions outlined in the report, and I'll speak briefly to it.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Seconded by Councillor Gillies.
So contrary to the last application, in some ways similar in its 8-scale nature, I think this demonstrates a significant improvement and a response to some of the needs of our community. I'm very glad to see the consolidation of the number of dwellings, and I presume that's also in response to the demand from the community, which is why we really question, buildings that come to us as has just come to us, which has that many one-bedroom and studio apartments, because we know the market is also asking for something different. So we really question sometimes the motives when those applications come to us, and we have subsequent applications like this, which were approved at a higher number of one-bedroom dwellings, but then when you test the market and look at the needs of that community, you realise that the needs are really different. So we're really happy to see the consolidation, which does improve the amenity and sustainability of the entire dwelling. Obviously, there's an existing permit on this, so it restricts what we're able to do with it. I know there are questions about 8-storey buildings on Lygon Street, and there are some concerns around it, but I'm hopeful that these amended plans will go some way to alleviating some of those concerns and get better design and development outcomes in that corridor as it transforms very significantly. So thank you for the amended plans.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Gillies, do you wish to add anything? No? Okay. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I'll pass it over to the planning officer to outline the process.
Thank you. The Urban Planning Committee has decided to issue a notice of decision to grant an amended planning permit, subject to the conditions included in the recommendation. Following the issue of the notice of decision, both the applicant and all objector parties will receive a copy of the decision, and the objectors will have 21 days to lodge an appeal with the tribunal. In the event that no appeal is lodged, at VCAT, a planning permit will be issued. The applicant has 60 days from the issue of the permit to appeal any conditions on the permit should they wish to.
Thank you.